Welcome to Soul Rise Stories, where real people, real struggles, and real motivation come to life. Let's begin today's inspiring journey. Jacob lived in a quiet American town where the sky always seemed too big for someone like him. Someone who always felt too small, too lost, and too unwanted in a world full of noise, pressure, and perfection. And ever since he was a little boy, people called him a failure because he couldn't read properly, couldn't focus in class, and always failed his tests. His teachers whispered that he might never be normal. And even his own father once said, "Maybe school isn't for you," which broke something in Jacob that he never spoke about again. He grew up hiding in corners, avoiding eye contact, pretending not to hear the laughter whenever someone read out his scores. And the worst part was that he started to believe them, that he was dumb, useless, and meant to stay behind, always a few steps away from everyone else's success. But deep inside that broken kid was a quiet fire, a soft voice that whispered, "What if they're wrong?" And even though it was small, it never went away. One cold evening, Jacob sat in his room after another failed exam, his eyes staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly like the thoughts in his head. And he realized something. He might not be good at what school wanted from him, but he was good at noticing things, how people acted when they were sad, how a tiny change in someone's voice could mean they were in pain, how emotions lived behind every word. And that's when he started writing, not for anyone, just for himself. Messy sentences, broken grammar, deep thoughts, and real pain. It felt like letting go of all the weight he'd carried for years. Slowly, he turned his stories into small posts online, using a fake name because he was still scared. But to his shock, people began reading, sharing, and crying over his words, saying things like, "I needed this today, and you understand my pain." And for the first time in his life, Jacob felt seen not for what he failed to do, but for what he could feel and share. He kept writing every night, while working odd jobs during the day, washing dishes, delivering groceries, cleaning floors, never stopping, never quitting. And after a year, his page exploded. Publishers reached out. People wanted interviews, podcasts, TED Talks, and still, he didn't tell anyone it was him behind the words, not even his family. But one day, during a big local event in his hometown, a guest speaker was scheduled to talk about overcoming failure and changing lives. And the mayor introduced the anonymous writer who had touched millions of hearts. And Jacob, trembling, stepped on stage as the audience gasped. People who knew him, teachers who gave up on him, friends who ignored him. Even his own father, who sat in the front row with tears falling down, and Jacob stood there, a boy who once hid from the world, now holding a microphone, heart pounding. And he said, "They said I was a failure, and maybe I was. But sometimes failure is just the start of a different kind of success." And the crowd erupted in applause. He went on to publish books that became bestsellers, opened writing centers for kids with learning issues, donated to schools, and made sure no child ever felt worthless for not fitting into a box. And years later, when a child asked him in an interview, "Sir, what was your biggest achievement?" he smiled and replied, "Proving that you don't need to be perfect to be powerful." His story spread across the world, inspiring millions, and Jacob became a living symbol of resilience, not because he had the best grades or the biggest awards, but because he kept moving forward, step by broken step, until the world had no choice but to see the genius in the boy they once ignored. Like, share, and subscribe if you felt this story hit your heart. And remember, this is your time. Stay strong,